joined today by Mr. Raymond Cassar, one of the Detroit area's premier criminal defense attorneys. Mr. Cassar, thanks for joining us today.
It's my pleasure to be here.
Mr. Cassar, how many drunk driving cases would you estimate your firm has handled?
Well, geez, over the 28 plus years that we've been doing this, I would guess several hundred, if not into thousands of drunk driving cases.
Oh, wow. That certainly qualifies you to answer our questions today. So let's start with the basics. Okay, I've heard that Michigan has some of the toughest drunk driving laws. Is that true?
That is correct, and the drunk driving penalties in Michigan have recently been enhanced under what they call now the super drunk legislation.
So, Mr. Cassar, we hear different terms for drunk driving, such as, let's see, I've heard DUI, OWI, DUIL, and OUI. Do they all mean the same thing?
Basically, they do. Different states and different jurisdictions have different nomenclatures for it, but it's basically operating while under the influence of alcohol, under the influence of liquor, driving under the influence of liquor. It's all the same charge.
Can you explain to our viewers what blood alcohol level means, how it's measured, what the legal limit for blood alcohol is in Michigan?
Certainly. The legal limit in Michigan is 0.08. So what they're basically saying is that if you consume enough alcohol to put you at a 0.08 and you drive, you're in violation of the drunk driving laws in Michigan. Now, we also have a super drunk legislation that says that if you consume enough to put you at a 0.17, the sanctions and the penalties involved in that are very, very severe.
So what happens if a person refuses to take a breathalyzer test?
I think it's a big mistake to refuse to take the breathalyzer test, especially now under the new legislation. If you refuse, if you're pulled over for drunk driving and you refuse to submit to a blood alcohol test, your license will be revoked for a period of 1 year. And that's a hard suspension, which means for 1 year you don't have a license and you really are going to struggle getting to and from work and doing all the other things that you need to do.
If someone has taken a breathalyzer test, but they feel that the results were wrong or inaccurate, is there a way to challenge the breathalyzer results?
There's always a way involving experts to challenge the breathalyzer. And a lot of it has to do with what the person consumed, whether there was any food or particles in his mouth at the time, how deep the deep lung air was when it was blown into the breathalyzer. There's always a challenge for the breathalyzer results, and that's what we do. We want to make sure that if this was an accurate test, we want to make sure that, if it's not an accurate test, we want to make sure that we challenge it in court.
Okay, so I understand that the penalties get tougher with second and third offenses. Can you explain how the penalties work in Michigan drunk driving cases for first, second, and third offenses?
Certainly. First offense is a maximum of 93 days in jail, and that's a misdemeanor. A second offense carries up to 1 year in jail. A third offense is a prison sentence. It is a 1 to 5 years in prison. And those three different charges no longer are time barred, which simply means before we had to say that it had to occur within a 10-year period. Now it's your entire life. If you've had 3 drunk driving charges in your entire life, which could have spanned 30 or 40 years, you are guilty of OUIL third. That's a felony, and you're looking at the potential of going to prison.
So going to jail for drunk driving in Michigan is a very real possibility, even for a first offense. What are the best steps a person can take to avoid going to jail and to minimize the impact of a drunk driving charge on their life?
The absolute positive thing that you need to do when you're arrested for drunk driving is you want to contact a criminal attorney, someone who is familiar with drunk driving, someone who deals with the courts on a regular basis, someone who can sit down with you and explain to you what the laws, what the rules are, and see if there's any challenges not only to the stop but to the breathalyzer examination. This is what we do, and we're always willing to help anyone that's charged with this type of crime.
It sounds like the best way for someone facing a drunk driving charge in Michigan is to understand the law, is to discuss their case with an experienced attorney like you. Now, is there anything important that we've missed here that you'd like to say to our viewers who may be facing this drunk driving case in Michigan?
It's a big step when you're charged with drunk driving. You want to make sure you have very, very good and proper representation. My firm has been doing this for over 28 years. We love what we do, and that gives us an advantage every time we go into the courtroom. We have been all over the state of Michigan. We challenge these cases all over. We understand how the prosecution works. We have a great defense team, and that's the advantage that our clients get. They get a team of attorneys working on their case, not just one person. We're always happy to help.
Great. Mr. Cassar, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.